All right. All right, I'm going to go ahead and call the June Planning Commission meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everybody. We're going to start off with our normal housekeeping item of reviewing and approving the minutes from last month. Commissioner? Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes. We have a second. We have a second. All those in favor of approving these, acknowledge by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carried. All right. Item number 1. Preliminary plat for Scenic Way Villages Phases 1 and 2, submitted by Craft and Toll on behalf of Scenic Way LLC, Nick Landers. Sarah, got a staff report on that?
Yes, sir, and I know I've been asked to paraphrase as best as I can, and I have not. I guarantee you have not listed out each item on all of these reviews, but I'm just going through some of the highlights. And hopefully you have looked at staff reports. So this first one is a preliminary plat for Scenic Way Village 1 and 2. You are probably all familiar with it at some point or other. This subdivision on Marina Way began in 2017. They came back and did a revision in 2019, but unfortunately let the permits expire, the approvals expire, and per code, they have to come back through the review process to get approvals. So this is just for phase 1 and 2. They have broken that down. It was originally 125 lot subdivision. They're only applying for 61 lots at this point. So the existing conditions on this is that it is a vacant parcel. It's located in approximately the 1300 block of Marina Way. It is zoned R1. And if you were to drive by, you can see a couple driveways, and you can see that some of the roads have been cleared. They have put in water and sewer. They still have construction to do, but there are items that we've said they're already in the ground, they're already there, we're accepting those as is. So we're not completely reviewing this, but we did go through and review it as a new subdivision application. As we go through, the Land Subdivision Development Code for review states that staff shall take into consideration requirements of the community and the use of land to enable the project to meet the purpose and intent of the regulations. Particular attention shall be given to width, arrangement, and location of streets, utility easements, drainage, lot sizes and arrangements, and other facilities such as parks, playgrounds, or school sites, public buildings, parking areas, arterial streets, and the relationship of the proposed subdivision to adjoining, existing, proposed, and possible subdivision of lands. The preliminary plat application for Scenic Way Village, it's a 61 lot subdivision. It meets the area requirements of the zoning code for an R1 zoned property. It was originally, like I said, reviewed as a 125 lot subdivision, which was allowed to expire. So I'm just going to go through the items, not everything, but just the items that still kind of need some comment or information prior to final plat. There are some comments on the covenants and restriction that were given to the applicant. It's for fencing and vision clearance that will need to be addressed so that they're in line with the zoning code. There was no open space shown on the plat, although this area is identified as an area that needs facilities according to the 2020 Parks Master Plan. Previous reviews did not require any open space. With the future phases of the subdivision planned and the need for housing in our community now, no open space will be required with this phase of Scenic Village. However, consideration for open space will be required with future phases of Scenic Way Village. And then similar to the open space, connectivity to adjacent properties was not required for previous approvals of this subdivision. Although we are specifically required to consider adjoining lands and possible subdivision, we will not require for phase 1 or this phase 2, which we're reviewing today, phase 1 and 2, as the proximity to Marina would not necessitate connections. However, in the future phases, an east to west connection will be required as with the subdivision, as adjacent properties are not already developed and could develop in a similar manner. It was noted per Pope County OEM that Fox Chase Loop should be named Black Hawk Drive because that's what they previously had agreed upon and have done addressing off of. Sidewalks per the Land Subdivision Development Code are also required along the frontage of the subdivision on Marina Road. As part of their plans that they'll be providing prior to the final plat, they need to provide a master drainage plan showing positive drainage away from each building pad on individual properties. And then double frontage and reverse lots should be avoided except when there is needed to provide for the separation of the residential from traffic arteries. And so that first row of houses are those double frontage lots because they gain access off of the subdivision street but also have frontage along Marina Road. So in those instances, a planting screen easement of at least 10 feet is required. At the discretion of the Planning Commission, a 6-foot ornamental fence or wall, which will appropriately screen and be harmonious with the residential neighborhood, may be required. Given that lots 6 through 28, with their backyards located along Marina Road, a 6-foot ornamental fence would be appropriate and should be constructed by the developer in a manner that does not impact site clearance. I did go out to the site, and there are trees along that back line. However, they're sporadic. There's a driveway that could be, or a driveway that was existing that'll have to be removed. And I do see that fences will be constructed by property owners. And so either they need to put on that plat that there's that planting screen and add additional plantings in that area to give privacy to the residents building their homes, and restrict any fences from being built in that area, or they would need to build that fence. In most subdivisions, you see that fences get built, and so that is staff's recommendation that they would be building that fence along that property line. And then lastly, the landscape plan will need to demonstrate that 90% of the lots within the subdivision are sufficient to support the residential tree requirement, as the developer has requested deferral of the street tree requirement to the individual home builders, which transfers that street tree to a residential tree located in the front yard, and that plan has not yet been provided to staff. So we do recommend approval of the preliminary plat with the following condition: to submit revised construction drawings containing corrections noted in the review comments listed as application requirements and preliminary plat of the staff report prior to beginning any construction activity of the project. As a result of the finding that the application submitted substantially conforms to the application requirements outlined in 4.2.1 of the Land Subdivision Development Code. It meets the area requirements outlined in the Russellville Zoning Code. They did construct the lift station, or with the construction of the lift station, all utility requirements are met. Soil and topographical conditions conform to city standards and inspections. The roadway has adequate capacity to handle the additional traffic load, and construction of residential single-family homes is the highest and best use of this property. Are there any questions?
All right, thank you, Sarah.
Yes, sir.
Greg, you want to give us your take on that?
Thank you, Commissioners. Greg Long with Craft and Toll, representing Nick Landers and Scenic Way LLC, the developers of the property. This is a project that, again, was started in 2017, and financial situation, a pandemic, just a myriad of things caused this project to be delayed in construction, even though we've got all the utilities in, the storm drainage in. And I'll let Mr. Landers, if he wants to speak more to that, speak to that. But so the project basically was put on hold, and we're in the position now that we want to restart that. And so what we're asking is that we'd be able to finish what we started in 2017. We have made some concessions to try and get as close as we can to the current zoning code, because we're under a different code when it was first approved. We have moved some sidewalks to accommodate that. We're working with planning on the landscape requirements for street trees, stuff like that. The only issue that, in all of the comments that the staff mentioned, we have no problem with those with the exception of two. The wall along Marina Road and the sidewalk along Marina Road. We object to that for a couple of reasons. When we first presented this in 2017, the city indicated they may want a sidewalk on Marina Road, but RDOT, who owns that state highway, was adamantly against a sidewalk on their right-of-way, meaning that the sidewalk would have had to been back up in the backyards of those lots along that street. And so the previous planning regime said that's fine, and the commission approved it without that sidewalk. The second one is the wall, and it's a similar situation. That wall would have to be on the developer's property. There's a nice, even though there are a couple sporadic places, but there's a nice buffer there of trees at the backs of those lots along Marina Way. We would prefer not to put a wall there, but maybe go in there and take care of those couple little holes there with some screening. There will be, we have it in the plan, it will be reflected on the final plat that, has to be approved before we can start building houses. A landscape buffer zone to restrict access onto Marina Road from the backs of those lots. That's always been our intent, and again, that's what we'll move forward with. But adding that wall would add a significant cost to this project, and really wouldn't, in my mind, wouldn't serve a purpose, nor would the sidewalk. There's no other sidewalk along Marina Road anywhere, so this sidewalk would not be utilized other than to get access into other people's backyards. And so that's my comments.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Long before?
A little bit off, is the sewer, does it pump back over mountain or go down Marina Road and come all the way back?
It's the sewer lift station's in, the force main's in, we pump it up to, that River Oaks subdivision right there. There's another lift station right there.
All right. You have a question? Oh, okay. All right, thank you, Greg, I appreciate it. Mr. Landers, did you want to add anything to that? Or is he here?
I'm Nick Landers with Landers Development. You have to pardon me, I'm a little weak. I just finished radiation. We've been trying to get this thing started for a long time, and in the beginning, the lift station was, I guess it was our fault, we didn't budget it near what we had to pay for it, and that kind of threw us out of line. It's taken a while to accumulate enough money to come back in and get this project going. We want to try to make it a good project. We build a lot of homes in Bryant. We build good quality homes. All we want to do is get this thing started. I'm not trying to beat anybody out of anything. We didn't allow for sidewalks and fences when we rebudgeted, and again, I guess that's our fault. I don't know. I don't think a sidewalk would look very good on that road. We've done subdivisions in Bryant, which I'm not trying to compare, but when you kind of get a rustic looking area, to me, sidewalks look funny there. That's just my personal opinion of the thing, but y'all been good to us. Everybody's worked with us on this thing. We just seem to be snake bit, and like Greg said, we got caught in the pandemics and the recessionary economy and just trying to accumulate. But I promise you, if you'll work with us, we'll try to work, and we'll give you a good product. Always proud to show our work if anybody ever wants to see it. But I'm just here to say I'd like to get started and do something positive up there, and I appreciate your help. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Landers. All right. Commissioners, you have any questions for anybody, or what's your pleasure?
Mayor, I would assume, after these houses are developed, if the homeowner wanted to put fence, which would be in their backyard, that would face what is the marina, if they wanted that privacy area, which I imagine they probably would, then that would fall under, we would still have the,
So right now on their plat, they have a restrictive, an access restriction easement on the rear of the property, but not a fence restriction, and it's not shown that there's that planting screen requirement on the plat. So if they show that that's on the plat, then they wouldn't be able to put a fence within that easement area if it restricts fences for that planting screen. But they could, yes, the homeowner.
So our intent would be from the right-of-way line to have that landscape buffer with those trees. Outside of that, on the homeowner side, they could then build a fence, just not in that buffer zone. Because we want a space there to buffer that from the traffic. The trees offer a good sound barrier from the traffic also. So they would be able to construct a rear fence for privacy in their yard. It would just have to be held back off of that buffer area. So does that make sense?
yeah, I was looking at that, I agree with Mr. Landers on the, on the natural buffer part of it. I was just curious if there was enough room, for the homeowner, if they wanted to construct that privacy fence, that if there was still enough room for them
Yeah.
to do that, and then that would fall under, that'd fall in the guidelines of the commission on how to do that and what would be
Yeah.
appropriate.
Yeah, they would still have, if they're going to build a fence, they'd have to still come get a permit for that fence. We want to hold those fences back off of that landscape buffer, because I think the trees will look a lot nicer there than building a wall out there. And so,
And Luke, to add to that, those lots are, I think they're about 125 or 135 feet long for those properties. They're longer lots, and so they do have more room in their backyard than a traditional lot that backs up to another residential house.
All right, guys. Any other questions? What's your pleasure, gentlemen?
I'll make a motion to approve with, without, constructing the wall and, waiving the sidewalk requirement.
I'll second that.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. Everybody clear on what the motion and second are? All those in favor, acknowledge by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried.
May I just confirm that
Yes.
that was just for the sidewalk on Marina, not internal to the subdivision, correct? Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Let's make sure we have that noted. All right. Item number 2, we have a special use permit to allow industrial use not listed on the cryptocurrency mining facility in an M1 zone located at 611 Tyler Road submitted by Barrett and Associates on behalf of Block Ops Mining. Is that right? LLC? Sarah, you have a staff report on that?
Yes, and I know you are all familiar with this, is this is just revising their special use permit that they were issued back in April of 2022. So we're very familiar with the Bitcoin mining and the decibel levels, and I'll try to be as brief as I can, but of course this does come back to discussion on decibel levels. In this image here, you can see their previous site plan, which has the green landscaping shown. That's what they originally submitted for with the individual containers. They are coming back. They built a facility in Texas, and they utilized a warehouse, and it had much better sound barrier capabilities. And so they are proposing to build a warehouse. And so this is a picture of their proposed site plan. They are no longer proposing to utilize those sound barrier containers. But they're building a warehouse, and so all of the, yes, sir. So just kind of familiarize ourselves again. This is an undeveloped vacant parcel. It is located between Tyson along Tyler Road and Entergy Substation along East 6th Street. It is directly south of that residential subdivision. The property is zoned M1 along with the surrounding properties except for that residential subdivision to the north, which is zoned R2. So I'm going to try to be quick on this. As we know, Bitcoin, we've demonstrated that the decibel levels increase with this type of activity. We'll remember that normal breathing is 10 decibels, but as you get louder, it increases, but it's not linear. It's not this plus this is double. It's on a curvilinear. Yes, sir. And so under their original proposal, which is that top right facility, which is just a container, the measured levels were 55 dBA. The modeled Bitcoin level was 50. It gave the combined level of 56.2, which was an increase of 1.2 decibels. Under this new study that they did based on an actual facility that they built in Texas and then went and measured the decibel levels at different distances. So this is actual numbers that they were able to use instead of modeled numbers. On the low side, the revised study and site plan demonstrated that the construction of this warehouse building with no sound abatement measures, so no 18-foot wall, would produce decibel readings about 42.2 and 41.9 in a location near the property lines for the residential subdivision to the north. And so we take those low and high measured and the modeled combined levels. You know, originally they were proposing 56.2, and now we're looking at 54.2 or 55 on the high side. So a lot lower. Staff acknowledges that the current readings are in excess of the EPA recommendation. However, this revision brings the project closer into alignment with those EPA recommendations. EPA recommends dBA levels of 50 dBA at night, and so it's been reduced by 8 decibels, which is a benefit to the residential neighborhood to the north. So with those existing nighttime levels being the 54.8 and the proposed project estimating that the sound levels would be an increase of 0.2 at the high end, that would raise that decibel expected to 55.0. The acoustical consultant did recommend revising the requirements of the special use permit, but he still is with the EPA recommendations that nighttime levels should be at the 50 decibels. So, as a result, staff does recommend revising the conditions to the original special use permit to the following conditions. Ensure the discharge side of the facility is pointed away from the residential areas because there is still a discharge side, and they are proposing to pointed away from the residential areas. Construction of the acoustically absorptive warehouse be utilized as that sound barrier for the facility. So this would do away with the 18-foot wall and just allow it to be the warehouse as proposed on this application. Then they're still responsible for conducting post-construction compliance testing to demonstrate that the facility does not exceed 55.2. So we did give them an additional 2 decibels, but this is lower than their original approval because they are at lower levels and can be closer to the EPA recommendation. On the south side of the right-of-way for East 6th Street after 6 p.m. If an exceedance is measured, install acoustical louvers on the warehouse or add additional attenuation treatments such as acoustic panels, blankets to the interior of the building. And if acoustic louvers are installed, conduct additional compliance testing to demonstrate that the warehouse with the acoustic louvers do not exceed the 55.2 on the south side of the right-of-way for 6th Street. They still have to submit for approval and recording of an incidental subdivision. They are proposing to potentially partition that property into 2 parcels, and if they do not do that, they will need to install a site obscuring fence at the right-of-way line for the neighborhood to the north, and then ensure that landscaping is in compliance with the Russellville zoning code. And this is as a result of the findings that the applicant demonstrates compliance with the regulations within Article 2.13 of the Russellville zoning code. The city's consultant concurs with the revised report for that the warehouse would justify changes to the original special use permit. The proposed use is in line with adjacent uses in this district, and current traffic routes are constructed in such a way to handle the traffic from this business. Thank you. Do you have any questions? According to their study, they can, but there are, what their study said is without any additional treatment. So they're going to build this warehouse, and their study shows that they don't need to do anything else. However, if the levels are not in compliance, then they'll have additional sound barrier applications that they can do. And so they'll either install those acoustical panels, blankets, install the acoustic louvers, or add additional attenuation treatments, which are, those are the blankets / so they have a couple of options that they would be able to do to bring it into compliance if they exceed those levels.
Has any of the residents of that area had any comments about this?
Not this time around, and I think last time we just got a call on this, just asking questions, but and last time we went out and knocked on doors to talk to people and didn't have no complaints or no concerns.
I think the last time the gentleman that was here had an in-home
Yes.
mining. So he had a question. He was doing it himself.
Dave, since you're already, why don't you come up here, and I know you got something else to add to that.
For the record, David Garza with Barrett and Associates. We've agreed to most everything that Sarah has given to you, with the exception of the original permit, the original special use permit. The decibel level was 56.2, not 55.2. And it also, the commission granted a 3 dBA variance, plus or minus. It was in the staff report of the letter of determination in April of 22, but it did not get into the ordinance, so we don't know why it was left off. Maybe it's just a typo. But the developer would like to maintain those, go back to that original request. It is 1 extra dBA, but he'd like to maintain that 56.2 that was originally approved with the 3 plus or minus. And with the new design, I think it really works better. And I like the idea that there's an actual facility. And so it's in Comanche, Texas, and there are houses around it. If you look online, you'll see there's about 7 farmhouses that are around this unit. So we were able actually to get actual readings out there. They went out there, I think, 3 different times and got readings, as opposed to just a study, you know, because a study, you don't really know until you put it in. But with the actual readings that we have and this is the same building, the same equipment that's going to be built in there, it's identical. It's supposed to be identical to what they're doing. No, as far as I know, they didn't. They put a screen on one side and then it blows out the other side. And then they use what's called a mister or fogger to keep it cool, which is water. They fog the air with water. Yeah, something like that. It's pressurized. But there are safeguards, like Sarah said. If it does not meet, then they have to come and they have to do something to mitigate that noise.
Okay. All right, has anybody got any questions for Dave before he steps down? Thank you, sir. All right, commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Mrs. Black, I would make a motion for approval based upon our original, to help me out on
The 56.2
that. 56.2
plus or minus
3.
3.
And I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the request with these conditions. All those in favor acknowledge by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carried. Okay. All right. Item number 3, special use permit to allow digital billboard located at 46 Bradley Cove Road, submitted by Vision Outdoor Media LLC on behalf of Winslow Holdings LLC. Sarah, you have a staff report?
Yes, sir. So this is a special use permit for Winslow Holdings billboard. As you're familiar with the site, I'm sure it's the current off-premise sign for Exxon that used to be located at the corner of 331 and Main Street, where First State Bank currently is. So it's an existing double post off-premise sign for Exxon. It's immediately adjacent to the Welcome to Russellville sign located on Interstate 40. North of this property is the Flying J truck stop, truck washes and repair, and east of the property is the waste management property. There is an existing active billboard on the waste management property approximately 675 to 700 feet from this location, and properties in this area are zone C2 highway commercial. As we go through and review this application, the applicant made the statement several times to staff that they have an active B-tag permit with the state of Arkansas, with the Department of Transportation, and so staff did have to do a little bit of digging to understand what that B-tag permit is. This application is to replace an off-premise sign, so it was never permitted by the city as a billboard. It's an off-premise sign. RDOT confirmed that they have an active B-tag billboard permit, but a billboard permit, those B-tag billboard permits were issued for anything that was on their interstate, on their right-of-way. It could have been a piece of paper, or it could have been an off-premise sign. It was just a general term that they used. B-tag permits are a non-conforming permit, which allows the sign to remain as it was originally permitted, except for customary maintenance or repair until it is either destroyed or removed. The state also confirmed that they are allowed to apply for an A-tag permit. However, many B-tag permits are not issued A-tag permits for a variety of reasons, including location and spacing. In order for the state to issue an A-tag permit, the city has to approve a special use permit, because special use permits are the only way we can permit a billboard. Conforming billboards are required to meet the following criteria. Sign dimensions: a maximum sign area of 672 square feet, which this proposal meets, a maximum height of 60 feet. The proposal is for a sign on approved height of 65 feet tall, which is in excess of the permitted allowance by 5 feet. The applicant has verbally stated that the billboard will not be this tall. However, that would need to be shown and confirmed with the sign permit if this application is approved. No plans were submitted showing compliance. Number of signs. Billboard structure shall be placed no less than 1,000 linear feet from other billboard sign structures. The proposed location is within the distance of 675 to 700 linear feet from an A-tag active billboard. In order for the Planning Commission to approve this, a variance would need to be obtained prior to issuing an approval for the special use permit. Per RDOT, if the Planning and Development Office were to issue a variance for that location, it would create a zoning action strictly for the purpose of erecting a billboard, which is not recognized for outdoor advertising control purposes. And then design standards. A standalone structure shall not consist of brick or stone veneer or other exterior facade shall consist of brick or stone, or other exterior facade materials for a minimum of 75% of the structure. It's not shown on the application. It would need to be verified with the sign permit, and at this time it is unclear if this requirement is met. As a result of this, staff does recommend denying this application as the result of the findings that the billboard is located approximately 675 to 700 feet away from an adjacent billboard, which is within the 1,000 linear foot limitation. The billboard is being proposed at a height of 65 feet, which is in excess of the allowable height. It is unclear if the design standards for the proposal have been met, and per RDOT regulations, a variance to the regulations is not recognized for outdoor advertising control purposes. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Sarah.
And I do believe we have Senator
We do.
Wooten here and a few others to speak
All
to
right.
this
Yeah,
application.
we have 3 people signed up to speak. Senator Wooten, would you like to, or do you want? Okay, go right ahead. If you would, state your name for the record for us.
Cody Smith with Vision Outdoor Media, LLC. So this is for a billboard that we do want to reconstruct. Right now on Mr. Wooten's sign, it is permitted by the state of Arkansas, as Sarah said, with a B-tag sign. Everything is in state compliance to give us an A-tag sign. We've spoken with the beautification head, William Reynolds, at RDOT, and everything would be permitted so long as we got the special use permit. I'll speak on the issue of it being 65 feet high. That's just, that would be like the maximum, but we would bring it down lower than that if that's what the city would require. So that's no problem there. We would commit to lowering that. As far as the rule within the city of Russellville, the 1,000 linear feet rule. So RDOT recognizes a linear feet as the same side of the road. I don't know if Russellville, I guess you guys will recognize it on the opposite side of the road, because the sign in question is on the opposite side of the highway, and ours is on the same side of the highway. But to that point, Mr. Wooten's sign was permitted by RDOT in 1976, I believe. Yes, 1976. And the other sign, the other billboard in question, was permitted by RDOT in 1998. So Mr. Wooten's billboard was permitted first, and we feel as if it is most fair that since he was permitted first, that, why was the 1,000-foot rule not an issue when the other sign was built in 1998? And then Lamar purchased the sign around 2008, and they reconstructed the sign, just like we're wanting to do with this sign, is just reconstruct it. The sign right now is in desperate need of repair. It's not a good-looking sign right now, and this would be a digital sign that we'd be putting up. So we'd be investing $250,000 in this, and this would be something that, you know, the city of Russellville could even use. I mean, we would allow the city, if they wanted to advertise events, or they had a special tax or something they wanted to advertise on the sign, we would certainly allow Russellville to do that. We would want to work with the city of Russellville on this sign and allow them to advertise as they needed. So, you know, we just want the same opportunity that the competition got to reconstruct their sign in 2008, and our sign was built first, so that's why we feel it's fair to do it in that manner. And if Jim wants to say anything, or Ronnie wants to say anything, they can speak on this as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and sir, I appreciate the promotion, but I'm just a member of the House of Representatives. That's fine. That's fine. I don't want to be a senator. I have no desire. But it is great to be back here in in Russellville. Beebe is where I live now. I started out in Russellville over 50 years ago as a state trooper. I brought my young family here. I had a choice between this community and Searcy, and I chose Russellville. And then in later years, I owned the Tiger Mart stores here, and we had 3 of them. Charles Blanchard called me one day and said, "Hey, I want to build a bank, and I want to build it on your property." He said, "Is it for sale?" And I said, "Well, everything but my kids and wife is for sale, except my kids sometimes." But anyway, I sold the property to him. But during the time that I owned the Tiger Marts here, and I'm sharing this background with you, so I'm not some outsider trying to come in and do something that's not going to enhance Russellville. I have Polk County in my heart. But during the time I owned it, I donated Gatorade for a year's supply of football season to Tech and the high school football program out here. And I owned other property in Russellville, and we built a McDonald's right next to us. And our desire here is just simply to use this property. If we go any other way, under the regulations and rules of the Highway Department of RDOT, we can't operate with a variance, or we'd go that route and it gets a tag A from them. But they have agreed to issue a tag A, according to Mr. Smith and his son, for the erection of this sign. And I can tell you firsthand, I've done business with Mr. Smith on other billboards, and he does an excellent job. He's built 2 or 3 or several in BB, and the city always, and the Chamber of Commerce always has access to that board. So what we're asking for is just to improve it. Now, I saw Sarah shake her head. Is that billboard on the same side? It is, isn't it? Because that's what I saw today again. Because I couldn't figure, okay, the billboard that is on the same side of the road as we are. It's closer to us, but here's the overriding point that I hope you'll give us due consideration on. That is the fact that my board was registered, listed, permitted by the state in 1976. And then when I bought Roger Shields out, some of you may know Roger, when I bought him out in 1986 and built the Tiger Mart stores, we were able to get that site electrified, and Exxon had never been able to do that. And Entergy was willing and worked with us and got electricity down there to it. So this other board that's in reference here, at the time, I believe it was built, it was permitted to be 700 feet. And they've recently changed that to 1,000 feet. But here's the other point. My board, if you call it a sign or a billboard or whatever, it's a two-post sign. I know all of you have seen it. But the issue here is the fact that that sign, we've been there for 12 years. And I think we ought to have some precedence over the erection of another board that at the time it was built was legal. But not only that, they have come in and revamped that board completely. And so, but to me, here's the overriding point. If you notice, there's a nice Russellville entrance sign out there. That sign has been there for, I imagine, 25 years. I never have charged the city of Russellville a penny to have that sign on that property. They built it. It's a nice looking sign, and so I just, I feel like that we're not asking anything other than just to be able to use that piece of property. Otherwise, I've got acreage there that's not usable. So I would appreciate your serious consideration. And again, it's good to be back in Russellville. Thank you each. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you. Thank you,
Good to see
Mr.
you,
Chairman.
Mr. Wood.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. All right. Ron Smith, or did you want to add anything? Okay. All right. All right, commissioners, do you have any questions? Sarah, did you have anything you wanted to add to that, or are you good?
Happy to answer questions.
Okay.
Question on the 700 feet rule, is that something we can change, or does that have to go through the Board of Justice to, and then come back?
It would have to, if you want to grant a variance to the the linear distance between signs, it would have to have a variance from the Board of Adjustment prior to Planning Commission issuing an approval.
How tall is that sign right now? The existing sign?
I want to say it's around 90 feet. It's definitely taller. I don't have the exact height on it.
You talking about the Exxon sign?
Yes, sir.
It's 90 feet.
Estimated at 90 feet, sorry.
In the event that it was approved, is there any kind of escrow that's put together in the event that something happened to your business, does that sign need to be torn down, and that would pay for the city tearing it down? The amount of money that you put into the escrow to take the sign down?
Mr. Chairman, I do have some questions, if I might.
Okay, go right ahead.
So if I understand it right, the current sign, or the sign in question, is about 90 feet tall, is that correct? What's the current height of the sign right now?
I don't know exactly how high it is, but I did notice that the trees coming up the interstate, the second, I noticed the trees are up where they're interfering with the view of it, but they're a distance away from it. But
Sure.
I can't answer you.
Yeah.
It may well be, but I don't know that it's that high.
Okay. Well, that number was given me just a moment ago up here. That's about 90 feet. And so, if I understand it right, we have a 90-foot sign that is in desperate need of repair, and the request is for a 60-foot or 65-foot sign, brand new. Okay. Just want to make sure I'm clear. Mr. Chairman, I asked that we would refer to similar signage on exit 81 and the placement of that signage. At the beginning of exit 81, there is a large double billboard on the right-hand side, double billboard.
About 400 feet up the ramp is the digital sign that was recently installed, 400 feet. In between there is a smaller double billboard on the same side. So if there has been, to my knowledge, nothing but a positive impact to the economy of Russellville, to the people of Russellville, to the benefit of Russellville with the signage on exit 81, what would make us think that we would have anything but similar outcome with similar signage on this particular exit? I don't know. That question is for whoever can answer it. If we've done similar elsewhere, what would make us want to say no to this? I don't know.
I agree. You make very favorable points, and that's the reason that the 700 foot and all of that it was relevant at the time that our sign was built in 1976, and we've maintained that sign ever since. Now, as to the distance, I don't see where there should be a problem. I think the economic benefit, they indicated that they're going to spend roughly $250,000 to erect a digital sign. And that's up-to-date, current code sign, and it's what everybody's using. It enhances the entrance, sure enough, the entrance to the city. And not only that, but we've offered to let the chamber, the convention of the Visitors Bureau, or the city of Russellville to have access to use that board. And like I said, I know that from an economic benefit, it sends a message. Everybody read those billboards, because you read some where it says, "See, this really works," because you read it. So, but anyway, you make very valid points. And that's the only way I know to answer it. Why would we be treated differently out there than the other exit? Thank you.
Well, I was just curious, and not necessarily directing this question to you, sir.
Right.
But more specifically to the staff. Is there, to your knowledge, is there any risk to the public health and safety if this request were approved? I'm just trying to think, is our gut reflex to say yes, or if our gut reflex is to say no? I would hope that our gut reflex is to say yes, certainly if we've done similar in other parts of town.
Obviously, we want to see things improved over time. We have certain regulations in place that maybe we did not have when those other signs were erected. But with the code, written the way that it is right now, the only way for us to approve that is to go through a variance process, which we can absolutely do. We just have documentation from RDOT saying they don't recognize a variance, which the applicant understands they don't recognize a variance. So if we were to grant a variance so that they could erect this sign, then it puts RDOT in a position where I have verbally been told that they would not be able to approve that billboard. We can absolutely go through that process if that's the direction we want to go. You have the authority to say that a variance would be required in order to approve this based on the regulations that we have, and that they can continue to argue that with the state. Yes, we would like to see things improved, but we have certain regulations with the linear distance between signage we would need a variance in order to get that approved.
But we can. We have
There's
mechanisms in place to cause it to happen.
We absolutely could table this tonight. They can come back with an application to the Board of Adjustments to do a variance for the distance between signage, billboard signages on the interstate, and then that would give you, if the variance were approved by the Board of Adjustment, then the Planning Commission could absolutely approve it once that variance is approved.
Okay.
And if they resubmit showing that they're under the 60 feet, then they would be in compliance with the height. So it wouldn't be that issue, and they've said that they're going to not build it that high. They just would be required to provide us the documentation showing that they're in compliance with those other things. I think the sticking point on this is the distance between the other billboard that's on the same side of the freeway, that's between 675 and 700 feet from the location of this Exxon sign.
And I'm assuming that the applicant is well aware of how easy we're going to make this process for you. Right, okay.
I believe we
Thank
have
you.
worked with them on everything.
Yes, they've been very helpful. They've been very informative. But here's the issue. I have no doubt that we would get a variance, or I'm hopeful that we would. But the point being is this, that most signs, and I've worked with the major oil companies for several years. I was with the American Petroleum Institute, and we worked on billboard signing throughout. And any time that a billboard law was changed, those that were currently there were grandfathered in. So we feel like that we were there in 1976, regardless whether it was a billboard or what, we had a sign. And the only major issue is the 700 feet that we're just asking for a special permit to be able to go ahead and erect the sign. So the staff has been very cooperative. They've been very helpful. But RDOT has told us and told me that they will not grant a variance. They won't grant a tag. But they have agreed if we have a permit that we'll be permitted. So, I mean, it boils down to your graciousness is what it comes down to. And all we're asking is to be treated fairly. You pointed out, Mr. Westcott, at exit 81, where I have another high-rise sign at 81. But these signs you speak of are on the other side. And of course, ours is on the far side of the north side of the interstate too. But we need your help. I guess we're kind of at your mercy, and that's where we are. But I want you to know that Ms. Jondal has been very helpful. Thank you.
She has her moments.
So Sarah, this is typically an instance where you would want to see a variance transpire. RDOT has said we will not grant based upon a variance. And special permit really does not provide us a vehicle, or am I wrong on that, to be able to do that?
Our process would be that they would have to apply for the variance, get the variance to the distance requirement, and then you would be able to issue a special use permit.
Based off of
And
that
then they
variance.
can fight that with the state at that point to see if the state would issue them their ATAG permit.
I think that's what everybody's wanting is, that's,
It appears it's out of our jurisdiction.
So the question I guess I have is, will they just not grant you the permit based upon just a variance, or if we come back from a variance and get a special permit?
It's because they won't recognize a variance for the sole purpose of creating a special use permit.
Okay.
it's more for the city. It would be for us to be able to put it on
So it is in our jurisdiction.
for the adjustment.
Why would you all not have the authority to vote yes on a special use permit? Because I kind of thought that was
Because Sarah, am I correct? Am I thinking on the variance would have to be in place first for us to be able to put it out there to where we can vote on that? So if we're gonna move forward with that, we would need to table this and put it before the Board of Adjustments to get that variance, and then,
Because special use permits, to answer your question, special use permits require consideration and sometimes add additional requirements to the code in order, as part of the special use permit. But when you're requesting to reduce a requirement that's in the code, you need to go through a variance process to get that authorization that would then allow them to issue a special use permit.
Let me ask Sarah a question. If we come before your variance board and get a variance, can we then come back and ask for a special permit? Would that make us proper out there? And keep you all in line with what your code is?
It allows the planning commission to then issue a special use permit.
So then the variance would be done away with so far as the next protocol or line of order. Would that be correct?
Yes.
Ron, can we check with the highway department?
If it happened the way you just described, the state would approve it.
Do what?
As long as it happened the way you described, if we got the variance in order to get the special use permit, and then the special, that's what we have, is just the special use permit.
Okay, so would the state grant us a tag A?
I believe they would in the instance in which you described.
Okay, we're
Representative, I'm willing to email the state and get it in writing that if we follow this process, that they would then issue that.
if you all,
I'm willing to reach out. I've been trying to get answers from them throughout this whole thing.
Yeah,
to
I know.
kind of help you guys all through the
Yeah.
process with this. So I'm happy to email them and say, if we go through and issue the variance and then issue a special use permit, since we've allowed a reduction to our requirements, if they would issue that.
so then it would put your commission in a proper position
Correct.
if we had the variance for the sign. And then they could come back, if you're willing, and issue a special permit. That way you're covered and we're covered, we get to build the board for Russellville. Is that satisfactory?
Process through RDOT, to get it in writing from them about what they will approve, because we can help facilitate that, so we don't keep meeting, every
Right,
month.
yeah.
Come back and forth.
Well,
I
can,
know that if we can get it from RDOT in writing, in email form, then I think Sarah can help inform to that. Otherwise, if it is, this, you may have the ability, or you may have already talked with them on that, but once they put it in writing, I think they'll be locked in. Otherwise,
well, it's one of those situations, call till you get the right answer. But yeah, I agree with Sarah. And I know Ron and Cody would feel much more comfortable if we try to go that route. And that'll help y'all from the standpoint of issuing a special permit if we've requested a variance, depending upon that we get the variance, But I'll offer that as a suggestion.
The main thing is we've got to, at the end of it, we've got to have a special use permit.
Right.
And that's what gets provided to the state. The state probably doesn't even want to see.
But if they're
Not going to want to see a variance. They're going to want to see a special use permit.
But if we can pursue that from your office and ask them for it in writing, then that's fine. That's fine with me.
If we're gonna, if that, we'd have to table this until next month, I guess, if we're, to do that, to either put it on the Board of Adjustment agenda or whatever, so.
Yes, and then we could hear the application at the Board of Adjustment and followed immediately by the planning
Yes,
commission.
that'd be great. That'd be fine.
half an
Thank you,
hour
Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members.
Thank you, sir.
I think that's a fair compromise.
I think it will be too.
Thank you.
All right,
I'll make a motion to table it.
okay. We have a motion and a second to table this till our July meeting. All those in favor acknowledge by saying aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carried. If there's no other business, we are adjourned.